Adesuwa, come here. Why say you just dey chop my son money up and down? 7 years of marriage, nothing to show.
Yes, Mama. Mama, no vex. God time no be our time.
Other women wey marry after you don born tutu. Nothing. You wan turn my son house to dry land?
In the ancient village of Ile-Omi, where the river sang louder than the people and palm trees bowed to the wind, there lived a woman named Adesuwa. Adesuwa was not just beautiful, she was gentle. The kind of woman who would give her last bowl of yam porridge to a stranger and sleep hungry without complaint. But kindness does not always protect the pure. Adesuwa was married to Obinna, a once loving farmer whose heart had slowly hardened like dry clay under harsh sun. For 7 years of marriage, Adesuwa had not conceived a child, and in Ile-Omi, a woman without a child was seen as a tree without fruit, admired from afar, but never truly valued. The whisper started softly, "She must have angered the gods. Maybe she is cursed. Maybe she is barren forever." Obinna's mother, Mama Ifenanya, never hid her bitterness. "She eats my son's food and gives him nothing," she would hiss loudly enough for Adesuwa to hear. Adesuwa never answered back, she would simply smile, and at night, she would cry. One night, after another day of humiliation, Adesuwa knelt beside the small clay lamp in her hut. Her voice trembled, "Ancestors, if I have done wrong, forgive me. If my womb is closed, open it. If my destiny is hidden, reveal it. But please, please do not let me be ashamed." A tear slipped down her cheek. It fell, but it did not soak into the ground. It hardened. Adesuwa froze. Under the dim light of the lamp, something shimmered on the mud floor. Gold, pure, glowing gold. Her breath caught in her throat. She wiped her face quickly. Another tear fell. Another golden bead formed. Her hands began to shake. This was not normal. This was not possible. This was a blessing or a curse. For 3 days, Adesuwa kept the secret. Each night, when the world slept, she cried silently into a small wooden bowl. Each tear turned to gold. By the 4th night, the bowl was heavy. By the 5th night, she could barely lift it. One tiny piece to the marketplace in the neighboring town, pretending she had found it near the river. The goldsmith examined it carefully. His eyes widened. This is the purest gold I have ever seen." He paid her more money than Obinna had earned in an entire year. When she returned home with bags of rice, new wrappers, dried fish, and even meat, Obinna stared at her. "Where did you get this?" She hesitated. "A blessing," she whispered. Within weeks, their once broken hut became the most beautiful compound in Ile-Omi. They rebuilt it with polished wood. They bought goats. They hired farmhands. Mama Ifenanya stopped insulting her. Instead, she began smiling. Too much. Women who once mocked Adesuwa now visited daily. "What soap are you using? What prayer did you pray? What shrine did you visit?" Adesuwa tried to remain humble, but blessings that shine too brightly attract shadows, and shadows were gathering. One night, unable to sleep, Obinna noticed Adesuwa sleeping out of bed. He followed quietly. Through the thin crack of the door, he saw her kneeling. He saw her trembling. He heard her whisper, "I wish they would love me for who I am." A tear fell. Gold formed. Another tear. Another gold bead. His eyes changed, not with awe, but with hunger. The next morning, Obinna was unusually kind. He held her hands. "Adesuwa, my wife, why did you not tell me?" She lowered her eyes. "I was afraid." "Afraid of me?" he asked softly. She nodded. He laughed, but there was no warmth in it. "From today," he said, "you will never need to cry alone again." When he locked the door, when he stood before her, and said quietly, "Cry," her heart skipped. "What?" "Cry, Adesuwa. We need more gold." He began shouting, and despite herself, a tear fell. "Gold?" Obinna smiled. From that night onward, Adesuwa no longer cried from loneliness, she cried from cruelty. And one night, when she tried to cry, no tear came. Then suddenly, her eyes burned, and when the tear finally, it was not gold, it was dark, black, and when it touched the ground, the lamp in the room went out. Turned black. The wind outside their compound began to howl, not ordinary wind, the kind that carries voices. Obinna stepped back. "What did you do?" he whispered. Adesuwa did not answer. She was clutching her stomach. For the first time in 7 years, she felt movement, not pain, not sickness, movement, like tiny fingers brushing from inside. Her eyes widened. I felt something, she breathed, but before she could speak again, the golden beads Obinna had carefully stored in clay pots began to tremble. One by one, they cracked and turned to dust, the wealth that would not stay. In the next room, sacks of rice split open, the goats began bleating wildly. The polished wooden walls darkened, as though burned from within. Obinna rushed to the storage hut. No. No, no, no. He opened a pot of gold. Inside was nothing but grey powder. He opened another, dust, another, dust, everything, all the tears, all the suffering, gone. He stumbled backward, falling to the floor. "This is your fault," he shouted, but Adesuwa was no longer listening, because she could hear something else, children's laughter, soft, echoing, coming from everywhere and nowhere. That night, Adesuwa did not sleep. She dreamt. She was standing in the middle of the river that bordered Ile-Omi. The water did not drown her, it held her. In front of her floated 7 wooden cradles. Empty, but glowing faintly, a voice spoke, ancient, layered, like many mothers speaking at once. For every tear of sorrow, a life was written. For every humiliation endured, a destiny formed. But greed has disturbed the balance. Adesuwa trembled. "What do you mean?" The water around her rippled, and inside each cradle, she saw a child, 7 children, boys and girls, each shining like morning sun. "These," the voice said, "are the children that were meant for you." Her knees buckled. "My children." But each golden tear replaced one womb blessing. Each tear soul shortened their time. Her breath stopped. "No." The cradles began to drift away. "No. Please. One remains," the voice whispered. "But only if balance is restored." Adesuwa woke up screaming. Obinna burst into the room. "Have you started again?" he snapped. She grabbed his arm. "They were our children." "What nonsense." "The gold." Each tear. It was replacing a child. Obinna laughed harshly. "So now you invent stories because the gold is gone." She looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time, she saw a stranger. By afternoon, word had spread, the riches were gone, the goats had died overnight. The wood of the house had cracked, the farm crops withered as though cursed. The same villagers who once praised them now gathered outside whispering, "She stole something. She angered the gods. Such wealth never comes without a price." Mama Ifeanyi stormed into the courtyard. "You wicked woman," she screamed. "You have finished my son." Adesuwa stood quietly, then she spoke softly. "I did not finish him. His greed did." Gasps rippled through the crowd. No woman spoke like that in Ile-Omi. That evening, Adesuwa felt the movement again, stronger. She pressed her palm to her stomach. Tears filled her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "I will not lose you," she whispered. Obinna watched from the doorway. His expression shifted from anger to fear. What if she is truly carrying something? He muttered, but instead of apologizing, instead of protecting her, his mind calculated, if she gives birth, maybe the gold will return. That night, he made a decision that would change everything. Obinna dragged Adesuwa to the forbidden forest shrine of Ile-Omi, the ancient earth goddess the villagers feared. The air there felt heavy, alive. Obinna knelt before the clay altar. "Great Ile-Omi," he called. "If my wife's tears were yours, restore them. If a child is forming, let it bring back wealth." Adesuwa felt a sharp pain in her stomach. The wind swirled violently. Then, a crack split the ground. A voice rose from beneath the earth. "You ask for gold, yet you killed destiny. You ask for wealth, yet you crushed blessing." Obinna began shaking. Adesuwa collapsed, and from her eyes, one tear finally escaped, but it did not turn gold. It turned into a small glowing seed. It floated, hovered, then sank into the earth. The ground trembled. the voice returned, one child remains. Not for greed. Not for pride. But for restoration. Adesuwa's stomach glowed faintly. If she survives the next moon, the child will be born. But if tears of suffering fall again, the last destiny will vanish. The forest went silent. Obinna grabbed her. We must make you cry gold again, he whispered urgently, but Adesuwa pushed him away. No, her voice was no longer weak, it was steady. If I cry again from pain, I lose my child. If I cry from joy. She paused, the goddess' voice echoed faintly, joy births life. Sorrow births sacrifice, and then, as they returned to the village, they saw smoke rising, their compound was burning, the villagers stood around it, watching. No one tried to stop the fire. Mama Ifunanya stood in front. You brought a curse here, she said coldly. We are cleansing it. Adesuwa felt her heart break, and for a moment, a tear threatened to fall. If it fell from sorrow, the last child would disappear. If it fell from strength, something new might be born. She closed her eyes. The fire roared higher. Obinna shouted. The villagers murmured. And slowly, Adesuwa began to laugh. Not madness, not pain, but release. A single tear slid down her cheek. It shimmered, not gold, not black, but clear, and where it touched the ground, green grass began to grow through the ashes. The grass that sprouted from Adesuwa's clear tear did not burn, even as the flame swallowed the compound. The green patch spread wider. The villagers stepped back. The fire, which moments ago roared wildly, began shrinking, as though afraid of something unseen. Adesuwa stood in the center of the ashes. Her stomach glowed faintly beneath her wrapper, and for the first time since her suffering began, she felt strength, not the strength of wealth, not the strength of revenge, but the strength of purpose. The night the spirit entered, Obinna did not feel that strength. He felt loss, humiliation, and hunger. As night fell, something followed him. He sat alone near the burnt remains of his home. I worked for that gold, he muttered bitterly. It was ours. Mine. The air grew cold. Behind him, the ashes shifted. From the burnt clay pots rose fine golden dust. It circled him slowly, like smoke, like temptation. A whisper slid into his ears. You were meant for more. You deserve wealth. She stole it from you. Obinna's eyes widened. Who is there? The dust tightened around him. It slipped into his nostrils, his mouth, his ears. He gasped, his body stiffened, and then, his pupils shimmered gold, the spirit of avarice. From that night, Obinna changed. He no longer shouted, he no longer demanded tears. Instead, he smiled, too calmly, too smoothly. He began visiting the marketplace again, but not to farm, to bargain, to scheme, to cheat. The villagers noticed something strange. Every deal he made left someone poorer. Crops rotted after trading with him. Goats died after he touched them. And each time someone lost wealth, Obinna grew stronger. The spirit inside him fed not on gold, but on greed itself. The ancient whisper had a name. It was called Egonla. The spirit that eats men from inside. Adesuwa's pregnancy grew rapidly, too rapidly. Within weeks, her stomach looked as though she was ready to give birth. At night, she dreamed again. She stood before the 7 cradles, but this time, 6 of them were no longer empty. They glowed and dissolved into streams of light. Those streams flowed into the 7th cradle, and from it rose a single radiant child. The voice of the river mothers returned. The 6 destinies were not destroyed. They were merged. This child carries 7 callings, 7 strengths, 7 spirits. Adesuwa trembled. Will the child survive? A pause, then, only if the father does not consume what remains. The first sign. The next morning, Mama Ifunanya collapsed in the village square. Her wrapper had turned into dust in her hands, her savings, hidden in clay pots, gone, all gone. She screamed Obinna's name. He rushed to her side, pretending concern, but as he helped her stand, a faint golden glow passed from her chest into his. Adesuwa saw it. Her blood ran cold. That night, she confronted him. What is inside you? She whispered. He smiled. You should be grateful, he replied calmly. Soon, we will be richer than before. She stepped back. No, His head tilted strangely. Why do you resist wealth, Adesuwa? His voice echoed, layered, unnatural. She felt a child move violently inside her. As though reacting, as though fighting something, the village begins to suffer. Within days, the chief's barn collapsed, the market well dried up, children fell mysteriously ill. Each time loss occurred, Obina's skin glowed faintly at night. The spirit Igonla was growing, and it had a plan. It needed one final source, one final power, the child. The confrontation under the baobab tree, under the ancient baobab tree at the center of Ile-Omi, Obine confronted her. You carry power, he said quietly. Our child carries power. Our child carries destiny, she corrected. He stepped closer. What is destiny without wealth? She touched her stomach. What is wealth without soul? For a brief second, Obina's face flickered, and behind his eyes, she saw something trapped, crying, fighting, his true self. Then the golden shimmer returned, the spirit spoke through him. The 7 souls will make me unstoppable. Give the child willingly, or I will take it. The wind howled violently, the baobab leaves shook like rattles. Adesuwa felt tears rise again. If she cried from fear, the child's protection might weaken. If she cried from courage, something greater might awaken. She raised her chin. You will not touch my child. The spirit laughed through Obina's mouth, then prepared to lose everything again. And suddenly, the sky darkened unnaturally, the moon vanished behind heavy clouds, and Adesuwa felt the first sharp pain of labor. It came like crashing waves. Adesuwa fell to her knees beneath the ancient baobab tree. The sky roared, lightning tore across the clouds, illuminating the village square. The villagers, awakened by the storm, rushed out of their huts, and what they saw, they would never forget. Obina stood before Adesuwa, his body trembling. The golden shimmer beneath his skin began to pulse violently. His veins glowed like molten metal. His eyes, no longer human, shone like burning coins. The spirit inside him was growing impatient. Give me the child. It thundered through his mouth. The villagers gasped. Mama Ifinanya covered her head and screamed, That is not my son. The wind intensified, ash and dust soared upward, and suddenly, Obina's body lifted slightly off the ground. The golden light burst out of his chest like cracked sunlight. The villagers fell back in fear. The golden dust that once formed Adesuwa's tears now swirled around him like a crown, but it was no longer beautiful. It was terrifying. His voice echoed unnaturally. You all desired wealth. You all envied. You all watched her suffer. Now you shall feed me. And one by one, small golden sparks began pulling from the villagers' chest, their hidden greed, their silent envy, their unspoken desires. They screamed, they saw it. The spirit was not only in Obina. It had been sleeping in all of them. Obina was simply the doorway. The village turns. The chief stepped forward, trembling. Seize him. But as men approached, they saw Obina's true reflection in the lightning flash. His shadow was no longer human. It was a tall, distorted shape made of jagged gold fragments. Women began wailing. Children ran. Mama Ifinanya fell to the ground, beating her chest. I told her she was cursed. I pushed her. Her voice broke. The villagers understood something in that moment. It was not Adesuwa who brought the curse. It was their cruelty, their envy, their silence. They turned on Obina in fear. Stones were thrown, charms were brought, but nothing touched him, because Igonwa was no longer hiding, it was feeding. The final choice. Adesuwa screamed in pain as labor tore through her body. She felt the 7 spirits within her child swirling like a storm. The river mother's voice echoed faintly. The child can be born, but balance demands sacrifice. She looked at Obina. For a brief second, through the golden glow, she saw him, the young farmer who once laughed beside her in the fields, the man who once promised to protect her. Tears filled her eyes, not from fear, not from humiliation, but from love that had died. One clear tear fell. The ground beneath her cracked open, green vines shot upward, wrapping around Obina's legs. The baobab tree trembled violently. The spirit roared, You would destroy him to save the child. Adesuwa whispered through pain, No. I release him. The vines tightened, Golden light burst outward. The spirit screamed as the earth swallowed Obinna slowly, not his body, but the golden entity within him. The ground sealed, silence fell, Obinna collapsed, free from the glow, but something had been taken from him. His breath was shallow, his eyes empty. The spirit was gone, but so was his life force. He exhaled once, and did not inhale again. The birth, at that same moment. Adesuwa's scream pierced the sky, and the child was born, a baby girl, radiant. Her eyes shone briefly with 7 tiny sparks of light before settling into deep brown calmness. The storm stopped instantly. The moon returned. The village fell into silence. Mama Ifunanya crawled toward her son's body, weeping. The villagers bowed their heads in shame. Adesuwa held her daughter close, but her face was pale, too pale. The sacrifice had not only freed Obinna, it had cost her too. Her breathing grew faint. The chief knelt beside her. "You have saved us." She smiled weakly. "I only wanted to be loved, not envied." She looked down at her daughter, raised her in kindness, not greed. And with that, the woman whose tears once turned to gold, closed her eyes. For the final time, years later, the child grew into a wise and gentle leader. It was said she carried the strength of 7 destinies. The village of Ile-Omi never chased sudden wealth again. They farmed honestly, shared fairly, and when someone cried, they comforted them, not because tears were valuable, but because hearts were. And beneath the baobab tree, grass still grows greener than anywhere else. A reminder of what greed destroyed and what sacrifice restored. Greed does not destroy only the one who holds it, it spreads like fire through every silent heart that feeds it. True wealth is not gold, it is kindness, love, and the courage to protect what is sacred, even at great cost.